Hi, Grandpa.
Hi. I feel like I'm being interviewed for a job or something.
I think we'll hire you. We're just gonna ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Alrighty. What year were you born?
What year was I born? 1924.
1924. So that makes you
93.
93. That's wonderful. And where were you born?
Well, I was born in Milwaukee, and I think I was born in, I don't think it's there anymore, but it was down near Marquette University. It was called the Deaconess Hospital. I'm not even sure if it's there anymore.
And what were your parents' names?
My parents, my father's name was Edward. My mother's name was Florence.
Florence. And where were they born?
I think they were both born in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
I don't think either one of them, my dad's grandparents, of course, came from Germany, but they were born in this country.
What do you know about why did your parents, grandparents come to the U.S.?
How did my grandparents...
Yeah, what do you know about their journey here?
Well, I don't know a heck of a lot. My dad started a family tree, and when he died, he passed it on to me, and I started following up, and I ran into a blank wall, and I haven't done anything trying to continue it. All I know is that my father's father, that's where it stopped.
Okay.
And they came from Germany.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, golfing friend of mine, took a trip to Germany a number of years ago, and I said, well, this is all I can tell you. At what province in Germany he came from. So John, when he stopped at the province, found out that the church that had all the records was bombed, gone. So I didn't pursue anything for a while, and then the Mormon church had an office in Fox Point, I think it was, and I spent a couple of Saturdays there trying to find anything more, and I ran into a blank wall, and I've been tempted to that one ad on TV.
Oh yeah.
That you can GNA and
Yes. Yep.
and I know that one of my teachers, former teachers, she had done it and said it was very reliable. It's expensive, but it's very reliable. And the one thing I do know, two things I know, that one of my relatives on my father's side was a famous painter. His name was Otto Becker. He painted the famous Custer's Last Stand, which was and still is in the hallway at Anheuser-Busch Brewery.
Right.
And I have I gave it to Bobby. I found a photo, what do they call that, a copy of the painting and a little history of him. So that's one thing I know. He came directly from Germany and was a famous painter over there. He used to paint these little mountain elves, like the little people. And he ended up working for the museum in Milwaukee, and he died. The other person connected to the family as an uncle, and I'm not sure what side of the family, it's got to be my dad. He was a ship captain, and there is a monument out in Louisiana. I'm not sure, I think it's on one of the water cities down there, and it sits near the water, and it's a plaque that says something Captain blank Kupfer. The ship couldn't come in because they were quarantined. So some relatives was the ship captain.
Interesting.
So
Wonderful. Now, what did your father do?
my father was an appraiser. He worked at the American Appraisal Company in Milwaukee. And his specialty was he would go into a factory that was defunct and he would appraise the machinery on what it was worth, et cetera, et cetera. And it was all textile machinery, making clothes and so on. And he did that almost all of his life. He retired from that company. It's still there. It sits right near Johnson Control, downtown.
Right downtown, yeah.
Now, did your mom stay home with the kids?
Yeah, Mom was a stay-at-home mom.
And how many were there of you? How many kids? How many siblings did you have?
How many children do I have?
No, siblings did you grow up with?
I was an only child.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Well, part of the reason, I guess, was that it was right after the Depression,
Yep.
and people didn't have any money. People weren't raising children; they couldn't afford to raise children. And so when I grew up, I lived with my father, my mother, my father's sister, which is my aunt, and my dad's grandma. And we lived upstairs from relatives, and we rented from them. And everybody worked or did something, but it was very tight. And I think the reason they only had one was never explained to me, but I am only guessing that it had a lot to do with money, raising children, etc., etc. I don't know.
Yeah.
where in Milwaukee did you live? Where in Milwaukee did you live?
Oh, I lived right near Riverside High School on Murray Avenue,
Yeah.
not within walking distance of my elementary school, Bartlett Avenue, Riverside High School, and then when I got out of the service, I could walk to UWM, which was Milwaukee Teachers College at that time.
Now, how would you describe your childhood?
How did I what?
How would you describe your childhood? Like, what do you remember?
Oh, happy. I had a happy childhood. Unlike today, I would leave in the summer. I would leave the house in the morning after breakfast, go over to the city playground at Bartlett Avenue, spend the morning playing softball, shooting buckets, playing chess, go home at noon, and then go back later in the afternoon. I mean, walking everywhere and never being afraid of getting mugged or shot or whatever. And we used to play, we had a vacant lot next to the house. Next to the house next to us was a vacant lot. And we used to play ball over there, softball, play horseshoes. And the policemen on the beat would walk. Squad cars are almost non-existent. That the police officers knew every one of us by name. Knew our parents, where we lived. I mean, it was unbelievable. And you don't find that anymore.
Right.
Even the police are afraid to walk alone down the street, which is sad. But I had a very happy childhood, and I could walk everywhere. I had 3 movie theaters within walking distance, the playground, wherever I wanted to go I could walk, and if it was too far I would take the streetcar or the bus. A nickel, a dime.
Now, what sports did you play in high school?
Well, I was out for basketball and from the time I was a sophomore. Freshman I couldn't because I had a growing problem. Today they call it Osgood's, the knee, Osgood's or something. So I went out as a sophomore, made the team, and the second week of practice I collided with another one of our varsity players and dislocated my knee. So I was out, and then my parents wouldn't let me go out again. So that put a squash on that. But I played tennis, and never had enough money to get any golf clubs, so I couldn't play golf. And I was into drama, speech, and take the place of basketball, which that was really hard on me. So so when I graduated from high school, I went to Marquette Engineering, and then the war was on, and all my buddies were in the service, so I enlisted in the Air Force. My dad wasn't happy, but my mother signed my papers. So when I was in the Air Force, because it was late in the war, I was being shoved around from one place to the next and played a lot of basketball and baseball in the service. And my knee got strengthened, and then one day we were playing in Houston and I tore the knee up. My cleats got stuck in a third base, rounding third base, and I was in a hospital for almost a month in San Antonio. And I met a doctor there and a captain who really did a good job, and he didn't want to operate, but he did. My knee got strong, so when I got out of the service, one of the coaches at UWM, Milwaukee Teachers, wanted to know if I wanted to come and play basketball. Well, my doctor got the okay, and so I played basketball and started on the team at Milwaukee Teachers College.
That's great.
And never had a problem with the knee until later in life.
Now, how many years were you in the service? How many years were you in the service?
2.
2.
And then the war ended. Yeah. And of course they wanted people to enlist, and I said, forget it, I want to get home and finish college. And at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but since I did a lot of instructing in the service, I decided I think I might like coaching. So one thing led to another, and that's what I ended up doing, teaching and coaching.
Were you ever overseas during the
No,
war?
never got overseas.
Never
The war
overseas.
ended.
That's good.
I was on my way to go to navigation training in B-29 bombers, which is the one that bombed Tokyo when the war ended. And then everything was at a stop when that first bomb dropped. And we didn't know what we were going to do. Then they bombed the second one, Nagasaki, and that was it. You guys are going home, we don't need you unless you want to re-enlist. So I never got overseas, but the war would have lasted another 6 months, I'd have been over.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like in the United States during the war?
During the war, I would describe it as the most unbelievable cooperative effort between people I don't think you'll ever see again. People gave up everything. Women went to work in the factories. If we didn't have a car, which we didn't, we traded our gas rationing stamps to the people next door who had a car for either their sugar stamps. And there was so much cooperation, it was incredible. It's the kind of thing that I would say you couldn't believe how people banded together. And the closest I've seen that, unfortunately, is now in Houston and Florida, Puerto Rico. It was that kind of bonding that you didn't care if you were black, white, pink, purple, whether you were Catholic or Jewish or you didn't care. And that's the way it was. And then, of course, I left and went into the service, but I had a chance to see what it was like before, and it was incredible. You try to tell that to people today, the kids in high school, and so, some of them don't even believe there was a Holocaust today. That's tragic.
Now, when you got back into school, how did you decide to become a teacher?
Well, I said that I had some experience when I was in the Air Force,
Instructing, yeah.
teaching men, physical education, exercises. I did some coaching with the young people, captains and officers' kids that were on the base. Before I went into service, I formed a neighborhood softball team with neighborhood kids, and we played some games. So I was always interested in doing some coaching, and that's basically how it got started.
So, did you teach gym or PhD?
Well, that's when I started teaching.
Okay. What
My
else do you-
first job was 6 years, taught Phi-Ed,
Okay.
and helped develop a K-8 program that they didn't have before, a big elementary school on the south side of Milwaukee. And I must have done a good job because they hung a plaque in the gym with my name on it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What did you teach after? What did you teach after gym?
Well, then after they were annexed, the school district was annexed to the city of Milwaukee, and the city of Milwaukee wanted me to teach Phi-Ed at 4 different schools. And I said, I won't do that. I said, that's not a physical education program. I said, you can have teachers do that without any knowledge. I said, I want to be at one school and develop a program. So, no, Milwaukee said no. I said, okay, goodbye. I had no job. Karen was a baby. And another one, Brad was on the way. So I walked the streets, literally, and I ended up at Sherwood. They hired me because of my background. And the principal at that time was a big wheel in the service before he retired, got out. And so we had a chit chat one day, and he said, "You're hired." Okay, I was hired.
And how long did you work in Shorewood?
I worked from 1954 till 87.
That's wonderful. And how did you move to become a principal? How did that happen?
How did I what?
Move into the administration to be a principal.
How?
What was the progression?
Well, I think first when I was at Sherwood, coaching and teaching, and we were raising 5 children, and I had at least one principal that I got along with him all right, but I said I can do a better job than that. And then I need my master's and I need the money, so I think I'll get my master's in administration. So I went on nights, I went on and got my degree, and things were happening in terms of enrollment, And Shorewood was going to have to get the 7th and 8th graders out of the high school and to build a separate school, middle school. So one thing led to another, and the superintendent said, Bob, I'll give you the year off, half a year off to help set up a program and hire teachers and so on and so on. And I said, okay. And I got the job as middle school principal. And so I had to give up coaching. But can't do both.
Did you enjoy being a principal? Did you enjoy being a principal?
Oh yeah, yeah. It had its ups and downs, like the weather, and some days good, some days bad. But those kids are so, 7th and 8th graders are so into it. Matter of fact, they are so knowledgeable about things and aren't afraid to express it, almost to a fault, that if you're not doing something right, they'll tell you. You want to know who the best teachers are in school? They'll tell you. And they're right on the money. And they're eager, and they're fun. The girls have more problems solving them than the boys. The boys just say, yeah, let it go. The girls, oh, everything is a crisis. Mr. Kupfer, help us, you know. And I used to laugh at that they'd come into the office. And, but it was fun. But I really missed the contact with the guys in basketball and track. The closeness, you almost was, some of them you became a second father, literally. And I still communicate with them.
That's wonderful.
I go to their reunions. I just went to the class of '62, and one of my basketball players lives in Connecticut. I told him about you. Don't ask me where, I can't remember, I'd have to look it up. And we chatted, and he and my wife, Caroline, and I went down one time near Disney World where he was a golf pro and visited, and he used to call a couple times a year.
That's wonderful.
We still communicate with some of the basketball players, and that closeness you don't get with middle school kids. I mean, it's a different kind of fun teaching. And people ask me, well, what was the hardest thing you had to do when you were a principal? I said, that's easy. Hiring. Finding the right teacher for that age group. That is not easy. And you don't always succeed either.
Yeah. And how many years were you a principal?
At the middle school?
Yeah.
From 54, no, not 54. From 1970 until 87.
Yeah.
17 years.
Now going back a little bit, how did you meet Grandma?
How did I what?
Meet Grandma.
Oh, at college. At Milwaukee Teachers College. How did we meet? Oh. She thought I had nice legs.
Well, they were very long.
No, I got introduced to her through one of her girlfriends while I was dating another girl. But anyway, the other girl didn't think I moved fast enough. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so and then I started dating Caroline, and we went ever since.
And when did you know she was the one you wanted to marry?
Boy, did I know she was the one? Oh, hard to say. I think it was one time, I think it was when one of my best friends from grade school and through, we used to play, if there was such a semi-professional softball, fast pitch. He and his wife, we went swimming, and I think that was the first time I said, I think this is the one. But that's hard to say.
Yeah.
That's
And
a long time ago.
it is. And how did you propose to Grandma?
How did I propose? Oh, corny. I gave her a pretty light blue jacket for Christmas with the ring in the pocket
That's cute.
at my parents' house.
Did she say yes?
Oh, she said yes.
Now, how was it when your kids were young? How was it with the 5 little ones and?
Well, she was stay-at-home mom, almost all the way through. And then when the kids were all in school, she went back to work part-time. She worked at a clothing store in Cedarburg, which is no longer there. And then she got part-time teaching and assistant librarian later on, and just stayed with that. And that picture, not that one, the other one, I can't see from here. One of those pictures was hanging in Oriole Lane School in Mequon, donated by an artist from Mequon in her name. And there's a what do you call it? There's a plaque, a metal plaque on the picture. I think that it's over here.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah. And yeah, and then she retired. And to this day, I'll never forget the day that she died. And it was the day that we went to see you run. You got second place in Verona. I think it was Verona, yeah. Big meet.
Yeah.
You got second. And then we went to play golf. And stayed overnight at Sun Prairie, and she died in the middle of the night. And,
How old was she then? How old was Grandma again when she died?
oh, she was 60. Let's see, she was born in 25. So
That was 1992.
60, died in 92. So she would have been, she born in 25, born in 92, so what, 67? Yeah, I think she was 67.
So how would you describe the kids growing up? What are some fun stories you remember about the kids?
Oh God, there's so many. Well, Karen, if they would have had women's sports in high school, Karen would have been a star athlete, probably in track. Brad, when I was in high school, was an outstanding gymnast, and the first 13-foot pole vaulter they had at Homestead. Bobby was football and on the state championship baseball team when he was in high school. We had a bad experience with the basketball coach, but or Bobby would have probably excelled in basketball, but we agreed to forget it. And David was baseball, and he played a little football, but he played basketball and baseball. And Tommy is the youngest. And Tommy, I think, spent his life growing up trying to match his brothers, which is a mistake. And he played baseball, and I often think back and wonder if, you know, we could have done more. But he got his name Bucky, not so much because of Madison, Wisconsin, going there, but because he got one of his teeth knocked out when his brothers were playing stupidly in the backyard, throwing stones and trying to hit him with a baseball bat. So I can't remember whether he missed the stone and it caught him in the mouth, or one of them hit the stone and it hit him in the face and chipped his tooth, and then got the nickname Bucky, the buck tooth.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, I don't remember too much about the elementary school. They were good students. The high school, and even in 7th and 8th grade, we were just like your mom, chasing in the summers all over the place. Little League here, Little League there. One time we couldn't do it together, so I'd go to one game and she'd go to the other game, and then we would meet later. Oh, it was a zoo. So yeah, but they participated in the sports that were offered, but we never pushed them into anything. They wanted to do the baseball in the summer, fine. They found a lot of things to do by themselves, because we had a big yard, and we had a tree house, a platform, we had a swing, we had a basketball backstop, and we had a wooded area. We'd go for walks with the dogs. They helped with the garden and cutting the grass until they found girls were alive and well. And Karen found boys were around. That was a great experience. If you ask them, they'll tell you that they had more fun there on River Road, growing up. Always had a dog, always had a cat, and
they got along pretty well together?
Huh?
The kids got along together pretty well?
Oh yeah, they did. They were always playing tricks on Tommy.
Oh, poor Tommy.
And but generally speaking, we never had to say, get upstairs and study. I mean, it was almost like they were in the athletics, they got home, they were tired, they knew they had work to do, and they went up and then they did it. We never had a push, which was sometimes you hear parents talk about having to push their kids to study or do their homework or whatever. We never had that problem.
That's great.
Lucky, I guess.
Now, what do you think is the greatest inventions in your lifetime?
What was the what?
The greatest inventions, technology.
Invention?
Inventions. Yeah.
In my lifetime?
Mhm. You can name more than one.
Well, what part of my lifetime?
Anything. I mean, just been alive for 93 years. What would you say are some of the greatest inventions that you've seen?
Oh, man. Well, geez, I guess, of course, the first space venture stands out in my mind. Well, of course, I was older, and all the things that have come about because of it. There's so many you can hardly name. A lot of the electronics we have today were developed because of the trips in space. Trying to go back way before that, I don't know. Oh, I know one that I always laugh about is that the telephone, not the invention of the phone, but when we had a phone, it was more than a one-party line. That you'd pick up the phone, there would be somebody on it. Not calling you, but somebody else using it. So it was called like a two-party line. And if you wanted to make a phone call and picked up the phone, somebody would be using it. So then they finally decided there's a way to eliminate that and you could have your own line and nobody would interfere. That was a blessing. That was a real blessing. I don't know. Oh, high school, 1939, the first Technicolor movie, Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
That was brand new. It started out in black and white or fuchsia and ended up in color. Wizard of Oz. Today it's a classic. Now today is the computer. My personal opinion, and I hate to have young ears hear me say this, but unless we do something about it, it's going to destroy us. And I don't want to go any further than that, but I have a favorite phrase, even the way what we're trying to do with kids today, too much too soon. Without proper evaluation, thinking of beyond, putting in control, and already look at all the hacking that's going on. Look at what could happen. You don't need guns to fight a war today. You should shut down everybody's computers. And what have you got? You got mayhem.
Yeah.
Anyway, so much philosophy.
What are you most proud of in your life?
What?
What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Well, other than family and the contributions that my family and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, I think I'm most proud of the fact that I was able to stay in teaching as long as I did and coaching, and perhaps have had some kind of a positive influence on some of the young people that I taught and coached. When I go to these class reunions and they come up and tell me things that I did and how much they appreciated, there is no money that can compensate for that kind of reward. Money doesn't mean anything. That means more than money. I'm proud of that.
Wonderful. Would you have done anything differently?
Oh yeah, but that's hindsight. Uh, Today, because of the way society has changed, I would have to change. In some ways, to deal with what goes on today, as it has to do relationship not with kids but also with their parents, and it's different today. And with the computer and the skills that you would be teaching them today, I still feel that some of them should be taught and relying too much on the computer before some of these other thinking skills are taught. But I would definitely, in the years that I grew up, I don't think I would change too many things. But right now, I'd have to change a lot of things.
Now, what advice or words of wisdom would you give your grandkids on how to live their lives?
Well, number one, let your role models be your parents and not the students in your class. That's number one. I would also say, and hopefully you're going to be brought up in a religious family background of some kind, regardless of what it is. And the third is self-discipline. Learn it. Most important, very important. And probably number four would be somewhere along the line, whether it be from your parents or your grandparents or whomever you are, the adults, learn how to communicate with people. That this lack of communication destroys marriages. It makes for enemies. It makes for fighting. It makes for war. But learn communication skills. Very important. And this little one over here, not so little, if you want to say something to Grandpa and that you like or you don't like, say it. Don't hold it back.
That's good advice, Grandpa. You touched on this a bit, but any predictions for the future? Where do you see us?
What kind? You mean talking about worldwide?
Yeah, worldwide. You know, I guess predictions for what's exciting or what you're fearful of, or
Well, I already told you what I'm fearful of.
yeah. And you know, how have you seen things change in parenting or in kids or in society that
We got too many lawyers and not enough engineers. That's just. I can't. I'm scared of the future. I'm scared for you. I'm scared for her. I'm not sure that what we're doing in Washington and people are there to make decisions are making, they do a lot of talking, but I'm not sure if, put your money where your mouth is. And do you really believe what you're saying? Or are you just saying it to keep your job, get reelected because you are one party or the other? I'm very fearful of the leadership.
From when you were being raised by your parents and when you raised your children, how do you see families changing, for better or worse?
Well, I think, first of all, many parents today are trying to provide too much for their kids in terms of time. Let them find things to do by themselves. To find what I'm going to do in the half hour, an hour, or whatever, instead of planning their whole day. That you've got to be here, you got to be there. Number two, I think that parents today, too many of them, think every one of their little kid, their little darlings, are going to be professional athletes. So they enroll them in soccer programs at age 5, transport them all over the country, and that's all you can do. You only play soccer. Baloney. They're growing up. Let them find out what they're good at and what they're not good at. Don't push them. And number 3, go back and read Alice in Wonderland. There's more knowledge in there than people realize. There's one I'll never forget, and I used to use this in school with the parents when I had to give a speech. Parents are so afraid to see their kids fail that they lose all sight of what it means. There's nothing wrong with failing, as long as you know how to pick yourself up and do something about it. And I remember in Alice in Wonderland, and I wish I had a copy on to get one of these days, or put it on my Nook. The Mad Hatter is talking to Alice, and he says, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, we spend too much time looking at what we can't do and correct it, as opposed to finding out what your strengths are and building upon it. And so when parents say, oh, she failed, oh, he failed, that's terrible. Maybe it's not so terrible. Find out why and what you're going to do about it. That's what's important. Does the sun shine every day? No. There are good days and there are bad days, right? Some days you're happy, some days you're sad.
This is great. Anything else, Andy? That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Grandpa. This is wonderful. Thank you for your time. This is wonderful.
Oh, my philosophy. Yeah. What do they say? Beget so soon dumb, so late smart. That's said in German some way, but I can't remember what it is. There's a lot of truth to it. Yeah.
I think wonderful.
Thank you, Grandpa.
You're most welcome.